maybe it's bio, maybe it's something that one of you guys out here is going to discover. That's what we have to count on. So, taking a look at the distribution, this is one that shows the distribution today. Don't expect you to look and know all those numbers. It's not a course. You don't have to take notes. You'll notice that a lot of the slides have information. The key, though, here is how it's distributed. And then, if you notice, it's mostly fossil fuels, both in power and in transportation. All right, so if we keep going down the road that we're going, this is where we're going to end up for power. Still, the amount that's there. This is where we're going to end up for transportation. We're going to have a few more biofuels. But this is what's going to happen if we don't change the way that we're doing things today. All right, the approach that I propose is called a third, a third, a third. My advisor, Jim Conca, says a sustainable way to look at it is a third, a third, a third. A third renewable, a third fossil, and a third renewable. There is a way, by going and pushing forward on this type of approach, we can see a sustainable approach. Now, there's going to be people out there that say, well, how do you know that's going to work? I don't have a crystal ball. But we looked at the numbers. We think that this is a much more achievable approach, and we think it's doable. Another thing that we have to think about, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Human Development Index. It was developed by the United Nations. And basically what it is, it's a measure of quality of life. We have to be ethical in how we approach things in the world. We need to think of everyone on the planet. We can't be selfish and think of just ourselves or just our country. So this is about the global citizen part. This is how we can use this way of measure to see if we can improve fields. So what's a good target? Well, let's say 0.8, because if you're near 1, quality of life is good. If you're down in the other end, quality of life is not so good. All right, so we need to find out where is it sustainable. I put one particular spot above 0.8 to try to approach that. How can we do that? How do we get to something like that? This is the one distribution showing how we possibly could get there. There's a lot of numbers up there. It is, we believe, achievable if you look at the third approach. And it'll take quite a bit. It'll take all 4 elements of the strategy I talked about. It's going to take political will. It's going to take a lot of money. I keep saying the money thing, but everybody knows in here it will take a lot of resources. Here's one for you. You know, on the scientist side of things, we're about facts, and we don't like to ignore them. On the political side of things, I hate to say it, but I think they do. They ignore facts. And I always kind of say, well, okay, what's a good model? Well, one model says, okay, on the politician side, I say there's lawyers. They can take words and mix them up and make it sound like whatever you like it to sound like. Well, on the scientific side, I say it's statisticians. You know, they can take numbers and make them sound the way you want to. But when it comes to it, facts is really where you really gain the knowledge. And that's why you want to educate everyone, all right? So you can look through whether it's political or whether it's someone misusing science. That's why I say, don't ignore the facts. All right, so in the United States, what should we do? We have to reduce our consumption. We need to go to things you've heard of, more efficient cars, different design of cars, more efficient buildings. I think it's called low energy efficient design type buildings. We've started hearing a lot about that. We've seen people moving toward that. The main company that I work for, Battelle Memorial Institute, we have one of our research labs that's totally green. And it can be done. It's definitely more expensive to build that way. It is getting, with more and more people going that route, it is getting cheaper. So there are things that we have to do as a nation, the United States. All right, let me talk about another politically sensitive topic, and that's nuclear energy. The United States, we're behind everybody else in the world. This slide's a little dated. We still, in the United States, have about 104 nuclear power plants. And now, though, in the last couple of years, there's about 40 that are planned for now. Nuclear regulatory commissions have 40 applications for new power plants. The reason I bring that up is nuclear energy has gotten, in my view, a pretty bad rap. I'm sure there's people that argue it, but it is a source of power. And it's, for the most part, carbon-free. So we have to really, in our third approach, really look at this particular source. They talk about the problems with it. Well, there are problems, but I think we've addressed most of those. The one that I want to talk about the most is disposal. Okay, everybody's heard Yucca Mountain, I remember President Bush said something about, well, we put that big hole in the ground, we're going to put something in it. Well, you can't just force things upon people, but from a scientific point of view, it is a good way of storage. There is different formations you can use. There are salt formations down at WIP, which is another one down in New Mexico. It's a formation that does work. And because salt creeps or moves, once you put it in there, it will encapsulate it. So deep geologic disposal is a safe way to do it. Another way is just dry storage, above ground in canisters. Well, you know what? You need room for that. Right now in the United States, the spent fuel from our nuclear power plants sit in pools. There's a moratorium on reprocessing fuel because you could remove the plutonium and actually have breeder reactors. There's a lot that can be done in the nuclear industry to use that in any global approach. Cost. It costs a lot of money for each and every type of energy that we use. There are skyrocketing costs. When we look at issues, the one I want to kind of talk about, there are different ways in which we can look at as far as CO2. The one that I like to pose and I've had some interaction with is on carbon capture and geologic sequestration. We are working on different materials and how we can actually extract CO2 from a flue gas stream and selectively pull out CO2 and then take that CO2 and pump it into the subsurface because it becomes supercritical. It becomes a liquid and it becomes stable. There's also formations where once you pumped it into the ground, it actually changes form. It will change into a mineral, trapping the CO2 in like calcium carbonate. Calcium carbonate. So there are different ways in which we can start reducing the amount of CO2 that we put off. Also in the oil industry, they've been putting CO2 in the ground for a long time. They call it enhanced oil recovery. They pump CO2 down below a already pumped out oil field, and that CO2 comes up, displaces the oil, pushes it up, and they actually are able to get out more oil. So it's not like it's something that hasn't been done. So cost, and for the different types of deals, also the amount of area that each one takes, we have to take into account that to build solar, it takes more area because you have to capture the sunlight. And as you go down and toward nuclear, you have less space that you actually need in order to put those sources on Earth. At this point in time, we have quite a bit of space on Earth, but if you saw the population slide, it's kind of getting a little slim. Next. Okay, last one here is these are the three areas in the approach that I've talked about. We can see that there's cost. Yes, the fossil energy side does take more, it does cost more. I don't think you can exclude any of the sources that we have. We just got to figure out how to balance the use of each and every one of those against the resources and against where you live. Well, if you live in a place where there's not much sun, well, there's no sense in having solar. If you don't live in a place that doesn't have rivers or a place where you can actually capture water, well, you can't really do hydro that well. You have to transfer electricity from one spot to the other. We have a loss of electricity across our grids just through resistance. So you might have to do different types of energy production in different parts of the country and the world. For those of you who like to play the game of risk, and actually talk about, well, what risk? Most of the time it's risk of one of us humans getting affected, dying. Oh, well, this is the data for 5 years in the United States. It doesn't say don't go to the hospital, okay?